there's a lot of people that are not presenting Jesus well to their families. And they're compromising their walk with the Lord because of their family. Because their thought is, well, I don't want to upset my family. I want to minister to my family. I love my family. The most loving thing you could do for anyone that you love is stay in the will of God. Because then when the people you love have a tragedy or a circumstance or something goes wrong, you have an answer.
To succeed in life, we have to fight. That's why winners train. Spirit, soul, and body. We have to be ready. When the fight starts, all the theories are over. We either have it or we don't. We will get hit, but we get back up. We fight to win. Now, get ready for a tactical tip from Pastor Kurt.
Hello, I'm Kurt Owen, and welcome back to Tactical Tips. Once again, I'm joined by my lovely wife, Terry. Thank you for being here. We were talking about hard and soft targets. A hard target is one that a bad guy realizes might present more of a challenge than it's worth. A soft target is somebody that's easily to take a bite out of. Now, when we were discussing this, remember what the bad guy's looking for. And this is interesting, if you just take my lovely wife, if she stands here with her phone, bringing the phone up, they showed a bunch of pictures to some men in prison. And one of the pictures looks similar to this. Or I think it might have been one-handed like this, and she had, you remember that grip, like this. And when they saw this picture, they said, now we wouldn't mess with her. And they said, why is that? Two reasons. Her head is up and she looks confident. Plus, she has a weapon in the hand we could be struck with. You need to be a hard target. Hello, I'm Kurt Owen, and welcome to Fight to Win. I have to be honest, this is probably one of the messages I am most excited about. It is, in a lot of ways, it's kind of a hallmark message of the ministry, which is a little weird because of how late in my walk with God this came. This is a message that changed my life forever. This is a message that's going to take us a while to get through. But if you will go back and listen to these things over and over and over again, it will change your life. All right? Now, what we're going to talk about, let's just go ahead and open up here, and then we'll kind of kick it off. 1 John 4, and then we're going to be looking in verse 16. And there's a lot to here, and at some point we'll go back and read some of this other stuff, but I want you to key off on something that John says. He says, "And we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God in him." See, John makes a distinction between knowing and believing the love of God. And quite frankly, this was a difference that hampered me for more than a decade of my Christian walk. Because I knew about the love of God, I just didn't believe it. I just didn't. And I guess here, usually we talk about it a little later, but I guess I should talk about an operational definition of believing the love of God. It means that the love of God has affected you. It means that you pray in line with the love of God. It means you think in line with the love of God. It means that you count on and are assured by the love of God. Because, and people say, well, why are you feeling the need to give an operational definition? Because I deal with people all the time. We pastor a lot of pastors. We have a minister organization called Ministers of Victory. And it's part of, Kurt Owen Ministries. And not all of them are tactical pastors like yours truly. But they're good people. Well, I was talking to a pastor's wife recently, and she said, I know God loves me, but she really didn't. And it was obvious because she was afraid of the future. She was afraid of what people were going to do to her. And each of those things tells you something. And we're going to talk as we go along. We'll have some diagnostics about whether you know and actually believe the love. But see, here's where I was at. I knew about the love of God. I could sit with you and emphatically, no matter where I met you, I could have met you just on the street and you were a drug dealer. And I could look at you and say, God loves you. And you would say, well, God could not love me for after all the things that I have done. And I would say, no, that's not true. God knew everything you were going to do and loved you anyway. God knew everything you were going to do and died for you anyway. And I believed it. And I would have believed that for you. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I had needs, when I needed God to help me, I would disqualify myself and say, why would God help me? Even though people say, well, you just need to know the love of God. I knew about the love of God. I could teach you about the love of God. I could tell you scriptures about the love of God. I just didn't believe it. It wasn't affecting me. It wasn't changing me. And quite frankly, there's a lot of people today that don't believe the love of God. They know about it. You know, you can go to football games and see John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. You can see it. We got football players, got it underneath their eyes and stuff. People say, well, how do you know? Do you watch football games? I've seen clips. I've seen clips. I've seen highlights. We can see this. We see it on roadways. We see it on signs. I've even seen it being pulled behind a plane. John 3:16. But we don't believe it. Especially, people say, well, you're talking about the lost. No, I'm talking about Christian people. We'll talk about lost later on, but I'm talking about Christian folks. Do you know how many older people, it has been their time to go home with the Lord, but they were afraid to leave because they didn't know what the next life would bring? Why is that? Because you don't believe the love that God has for you. You know about it, but you don't believe it. My own grandmother, who preached to me the love of God, before she left, you know, she'd been in a hospice for a couple weeks, and she couldn't even communicate, right? She's basically in sort of a coma, right? And I'd been out of town, and I got a phone call. Would I? You know, I'd just flown in, and would I go by and see her? Now she's basically comatose, and she's just been lingering. And while I'm driving over there, the Lord says she won't let go because she's afraid. Well, anytime you're afraid of anything, you don't believe the love of God. You cannot believe the love of God and be afraid. And I'll prove that to you later on. I just don't have time to do it right now. And so I went there to my grandmother with the Lord telling me this. And I sat there and ministered to her about heaven. I sat there and talked to her about how much Jesus loved her, and that though, yes, there were some corrections He was going to make when He saw her, but she would be welcomed with open arms, that He loved her and was looking forward to visiting with her. And once I ministered to her, I think for about, I don't know how long it was really. And then I left, and after she'd hung on for about 2.5 weeks, she was gone in 30 minutes. It really is dangerous not to believe the love of God. And I'm going to prove that as we go. But there is a difference between knowing about it, being able to talk about it, being able to quote scriptures about it, and you actually believing it. Just because you know about a thing doesn't mean you believe it. You know, when I was coming up, we had to learn ballistics, and there's a lot. Honestly, it was I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember this. I was with a buddy of mine, okay, and we read, and I might get this a little wrong, but basically, all the gist of the facts are right, is the fact that if you're standing next to me with a gun and you fire a bullet, and I take that same bullet, exact same bullet, you're shooting one bullet and I have the same bullet, say size, bullet, weight, and I drop the bullet, those two bullets will hit the ground at the same time. Yours will hit it long way off, and mine will hit it right down here in front of us, but they will hit the ground at basically the same time. Now, I don't remember whether this is in a vacuum or what it is, but basically that's the way it works, okay? So this buddy of mine was sitting there, and we're reading this. The teacher is teaching it to us. We're reading this out of the book, and he's explaining how the forces of gravity work on both bullets the exact same way. The projectile just carries it farther, and he's going through all this stuff, and he's explaining it. So we have an instructor in front of us who's telling this. We have the textbook right in front of us that's telling us this, and my buddy looks at me and goes, "I don't believe that. I don't believe it." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, he knows more about this stuff than we do. He believes it." and he's like, "Nah, I don't believe that." Now, did he know about it? Yes, he knew about it. In fact, the question was on our test, and he knew what the answer was supposed to be. And so even though he didn't actually believe the answer, he was able to verbalize the right answer, and he passed. So he was able to say the right thing. He was able to say what the teacher wanted to hear. He was able to say what was in line with the book, but he still didn't believe it. He knew it, but he didn't believe it. Do you think people can do this in Christian circles? Obviously they can, because John felt the need to emphasize, folks, we don't just know about the love of God. We actually believe it. We have both known and believed the love of God. It is not just an intellectual exercise to us. It is not just mental reasoning to us, but it is truth. We believe what we know about His love. Now, let me give you a biblical example of somebody that knows but doesn't believe, okay? So that you understand the difference. Go with me to John chapter 11. And in John chapter 11, this is where Lazarus is dying. He's dying at first, then he's dead. And in verse 1, and literally I could teach, there's so much in these things that I could teach. And I'll try to give you a little bit of tidbits, but we need to get to our subject. It says in verse 1, "Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped His feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to Him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Jesus heard that and said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of Man might be glorified through it." Notice here, Jesus has a habit of when he's confronted with a problem, He uses His words immediately to speak the answer to the problem. Okay? And He's not doing that to earn it from the Father. He's doing that because He believes the Father. Now in verse 5 it says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when He heard that he was sick, He stayed there 2 more days in that place where He was." Now that's an interesting statement. He loved them, so He stayed where He was at. You know, that is not the way most people think love is. If you truly loved Him, Jesus, you'd have jumped and run. You would have been near panic-stricken. You would have been worked up. You would have, oh, He's not sick, is He? We need to get to Bethany now. Right? Isn't that the way we think love actually acts? That we think that's the way love behaves? No, He stayed there 2 more days, and He explains it. He says, so He stayed 2 more days in that place where He was. Verse 7, then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately Jews sought to stone you. Sought to stone you, and you are going there again? Jesus answered and said, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees with the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. Now this is interesting because now Jesus is explaining why he waited 2 days. If I had left 2 days ago, I would not have been walking in the light. But I'm walking in the today I'm leaving because I'm walking in the light. What is the light here he's talking about? He's talking about the will of God. He's talking about how he stayed in the will of God. As long as I walk in the will of God, I cannot be made to stumble. It's when I start walking in darkness. Now, here's the thing, and this is just a side journey here with you and your family, because there's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of people that are not presenting Jesus well to their families. And they're compromising their walk with the Lord because of their family. Because their thought is, well, I don't want to upset my family. I want to minister to my family. I love my family. The most loving thing you could do for anyone that you love is stay in the will of God. Because then when the people you love have a tragedy or a circumstance or something goes wrong, you have an answer. Many of us are compromising the power of God and the will of God for our lives and our ability to help other people because we're trying to act in so-called human love, reassure them how we feel about them, rather than staying in the light of God's will. Man, I'm running out of time, but I want to tell you this story, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can because I thought I was supposed to get through this, was going to get through this whole chapter, but I don't think it's going to happen. But listen, this is what happens. Years ago, the Kurt Owen Ministries offices were in a garage, like a 2-car garage. And we had lowered the garage door, we had sheetrocked it in and stuff. And in this, we had 4 desks, I think is what we had. We had my desk against the garage wall. We had the administrator's desk against a wall. We had a family member that worked for us. Their desk was here. And then we had another desk of another gentleman that worked for us. Now, my administrator, who would have been, if I'm sitting at my desk, my administrator is to my right. And my administrator had, I think at the time, 2 children. And what happens is that all of a sudden his wife bursts through the door. My family member's here, I'm here, my administrator here. My family member bursts through the door, his wife bursts through the door, has one of his kids in her arms, and their child is blue. And it doesn't look like he's breathing. So she runs over and says, do something, do something, do something, right? And then my family member runs over and does something. Now they're all looking at this blue child who looks like he's very close to dying, if not dead. And they're all panic-stricken. And the only person who hadn't moved in the room is me. And why haven't you moved? Because I don't know what to do yet. I'm listening in my heart. I'm not positive of what to do. People say, shouldn't you do something? One aspect of faith is that if I wait on God, I know that it will not cost me. Truly wait on God. I don't mean blow God off and call it waiting on God. I'm talking about, it doesn't matter what area of life it's in. If I pass this deal up, you'll never get another deal like this one. You don't know who you're talking to. I'm a man of faith. God can get me a better deal than that twice in 1 week. I'll always be able to find a better deal because God takes care of me. Yeah, if you don't do this right now, everything's going to collapse. I'm going to wait on God and do what He tells me to do, and then I know it won't collapse. So here they are. They're all sitting down there. They're all freaking out. I don't know what to do. But then all of a sudden, all 3 of them turn and look at me. The guy whose name is on the wall, Kurt Owen Ministry. And they're looking at me like, why are you standing over there? You're the man of faith and power. Why don't you do something? And in that moment, I mean, it was a mixture of grief and judgment all at the same time. But I still don't know what to do yet. I still don't know what to do. But I love them enough. I will not be moved by their faces. I will not be moved by their judgment. I will only be moved by what God has told me to do. And I don't know what He's told me yet. And then, in that moment, God speaks to me, tells me what to do. I go over there, I minister to the child. The child all of a sudden coughs. All the color comes back, and the child's alive today. In fact, I think the child's married today. Now, I could have people say, "Well, do you think God wouldn't have? Delivered the child if you'd have just run over there?" You know, I don't know that it would have been God's fault. I'm His ambassador in the earth. You're His ambassador in the earth. You know, when Jesus was in the earth, He did things through His body. Now we are His body. Don't you think His body should cooperate with Him now the same way it did when He was in the earth? What if I would have moved without being in sync with Him? No, I do not believe I would have gotten the same results. If I'd have been moved by fear, if I would have been moved by their judgment, if I'd have been moved by their pain, rather than moved by the will of God. And because I stayed in the will of God, I was able to help. And that's nothing special about me, because there's nothing special about me. So, again, this is all free. So he tells them this. And so these things, after he says that he doesn't stumble as long as he walks in the light, he says, these things he said, and after that he said, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go to wake him up. Then his disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought he was speaking of taking rest in sleep. Now, this is interesting for all of you who do not believe in the power of words. If it doesn't matter what you say, why didn't he just say he was dead? Why say, I believe he sleeps, or he sleeps, I go to wake him up? Why not just say, hey guys, he's dead, I'm going to go raise him up? Because words matter. Then he goes on to say, and he says, however, it says, verse 12, then the disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought he was speaking of taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead. People say, well, see there, he said he was dead. Because they pushed him into it. But then he immediately undoes the whole thing about him being dead. But I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. So even though he said he's dead, he immediately speaks faith afterwards. Now, again, that's an entirely different message. But then notice Thomas. Then Thomas, who is called the twin. Now, most of us know him as Doubting Thomas, right? That's the way most people think of him, as Doubting Thomas. But it's interesting. He said, then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may all die with him. That's interesting, isn't it? This man who's Doubting Thomas, because he doesn't believe him even now, right? He doesn't believe this whole thing about you can't be made to stumble. But he's willing to die with him. You need to understand this. Never mistake your love for Jesus for your trust for Jesus. There are many people that love Jesus that do not trust him. There are many people that love Jesus but do not believe him. How do you know that? Because this man just said, I don't believe a thing you're saying, but I love you enough to die with you. Is he committed? Absolutely true. Does he trust him? Absolutely not. Is he committed to him? Absolutely. Does he believe him? No. He does not. All right, let's get on with this, because I got to get, again, our example is supposed to be about knowing and believing. So here in verse 17, it's, so when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. This is interesting to me. Martha does not bring anybody with her. Martha does not bring Mary with her. Now Jesus, she says this, verse 21. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Okay. You know, at first I used to believe that she was like blaming him, but now I think she's trying to build him up. Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. I believe that. Now notice this. But even now I know that whatever you ask God, He will give you. Now what did she just say? I believe if you'd have been here, he would not have died. This is real easy for religious people to say, well, under the right circumstances, this would have worked. Oh, of course, God is able. Of course, God is able. And then when you come up with, yeah, He's not only able, He's going to do it, and He's going to do it right now. No, not, well, we'll get to there in just a second. It says, but even now I know. Now notice what she says. I know that whatever you ask God, God will give you. She's acting like she believes. Is she saying the right things? Is she saying the things that Jesus wants to hear? Is she able to pass the test? Oh yes. If you'd have been here, my brother would not have died. Oh yes. I believe even now God will give you whatever you ask. Does she know it? Yes, she knows it. Does she believe it? Not at all. Not at all. And this is where we're going to pick up next time, because we need to talk about the fact, and you're going to get something out of this. You're not going to want to miss it, because knowing and believing the love of God is what is important. Not just being like Martha, who knew it, who could say it, but didn't necessarily believe it. To that end, we have a brand new book called Knowing and Believing the Love of God, a daily devotional. Listen, you need this because you need to be feeding on the love of God every day. You need to be renewing your mind every day to how much God loves you. And these will give you some simple things, plus some simple exercises to practically help you begin to believe and trust the love that Jesus has for you. He loves you so much, but it's got to move beyond just knowing about it to you believing it and it affecting every aspect of your life. My name is Kurt Owen. This is Fight to Win. And we here at Kurt Owen Ministries remind you, Jesus is risen. Victory is assured.
To receive your free gift from Kurt Owen Ministries, visit our website or call us at 1-800-215-0428.
Hello, I'm Kurt Owen. We have a brand new offer for you with our new subject, Knowing and Believing the Love of God. Again, this is the Knowing and Believing the Love of God daily devotional. This will help you get established in the love of God for your life. You can go to our website, fighttowin.tv, or you can call us at 1-800-215-0428, and you can receive this absolutely free. The partners of Kurt Owen Ministries provide the resources for us to give this to you. Take advantage of this opportunity.
Call us at 1-800-215-0428.